Today I want to break down Yhwach in a way that almost nobody talks about, not as a final boss, but as a being who literally suffers from an overload of empathy and turns that suffering into the destruction of everything around him. So go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out. And now let's get into it. When you look deeper, his story isn't about power, it's about being unable to bear other people's pain. And the further we go into Bleach, the clearer it becomes. He's not just a villain, he's a warped response to an original wound at the heart of Soul Society itself. There's something I noticed that almost never gets said out loud. The world of Bleach is originally described as a state where life and death weren't rigidly separated, souls flowed freely, without the fear of an ending. That's the lost ideal Yhwach carries with him. And restoring it becomes his entire purpose. When the 5 great noble clans divided the Soul King and created 3 separate worlds, they didn't save reality, they structured it and turned death into a system, almost a bureaucracy. And it's inside that system that Yhwach appears not as a mistake, but as a byproduct of that forced order. Yhwach is born completely helpless. He can't see, can't hear, can't move, but he feels everything. And through sharing pieces of his soul with others, he begins to truly live. People heal when they're near him, but they also die sooner. And every one of those endings comes back to him as experience. This is shown directly during the war arc. His nature isn't just to absorb power, it's to absorb the final moments of existence itself. If you compare him to Naruto, Hagoromo Otsutsuki also shared power through division, but that was a legacy, a conscious gift. For Yhwach, it's a parasitic exchange, with no choice involved. He doesn't decide to share, he simply can't not share. And that difference is exactly what makes his tragedy run so much deeper. He doesn't build the system, he's imprisoned inside it from the moment he's born. Over time he becomes a god, but not a free one. His ability, the Almighty, isn't just omniscience, it's an endless, unbroken observation of every possible future, where every single branch is a new form of pain he's already experiencing in advance. He sees everything, but he can't escape his own deterioration. He's terrified of becoming that helpless, blind creature again, like he was at the very beginning, and that fear is what shapes his cruelty. That's exactly why Auswählen isn't just an act of destruction, it's an attempt to stabilize his own existence. He takes power from the Quincy, because without it, he literally begins to fall apart. His empathy becomes a threat to himself. His dependence on sleep is its own system, and it's something a lot of people underestimate. When Yhwach sleeps, his power transfers to Jugram Hashwalth. But this isn't just a balancing mechanic, it's proof that he isn't whole, that the system is forced to reboot. In that logic, Jugram isn't just a supporting character, he's a functional compensation for an overload, a temporary vessel for a burden that Yhwach simply can't carry without interruption. Yhwach literally lives in a cycle of vulnerability, dressed up as omnipotence. The way I read it, every soul he pulls back to himself brings not just energy, it brings a moment of ending. Little by little, his personality becomes a sum of other people's final breaths. And this is where the real turning point happens. When Yhwach has experienced all of this endlessly, he starts to see life itself as a temporary mistake, and at that point, destruction becomes a form of care. Comparing him to Naruto, again Nagato also arrived at the idea of peace through pain. But Nagato wanted the discipline of fear, make everyone feel loss, and they'll stop. Yhwach goes further. He wants to eliminate the very source of fear, death itself, as a concept, the boundary between the living and the dead. That's far more radical, and it's what makes him so compelling in the story. His goal is to destroy the boundaries between worlds and restore a primal unity to bring back the world before the split. But there's a problem he never actually solves. Even if you remove death, there's still a consciousness that remembers everything, and that makes his ideal impossible from the inside out. After reading the manga, I genuinely believe that's why in the final confrontation with Ichigo, he doesn't see just an enemy. He sees an alternative version of himself. Ichigo grew up without knowing the truth, and still chose an imperfect life. Not because he didn't feel pain, but because he learned how to exist inside of it. Ichigo is essentially the anti-Yhwach. It's the ability to keep moving forward inside a system that's breaking you down. Yhwach doesn't understand this, not because he's incapable of it, but because for him, that system became unbearable a long, long time ago. He wants to erase the very possibility of being broken, but in doing that, he also erases the meaning of being alive. If he ever stopped absorbing souls, he wouldn't just get weaker. He'd go back to that state of total helplessness he fears more than anything else. So his path is always a closed loop. He can't stop. The way I see it, this isn't a story about power. It's a story about addiction disguised as divinity, about a being who absorbs other people's pain so completely that he stops being able to tell where they end and he begins. And at some point, you can't even say anymore. Is he trying to save the world or save himself from it? I'll leave you with that question because there's no clean answer. I'm not excusing the terrible things he's done, but to me, he's one of the most genuinely honest villains in anime history.